Hello and welcome to the Watchman Report, where we provide perspective to world news from a biblical standpoint, offering the biblical standard on current events, focusing on prophecy, moral and social issues. And in this episode, we explore Ukraine in Bible prophecy.
Let's turn then to the war in Ukraine. We need to be clear about what Ezekiel 38 verse 2 requires. So here you've got two literal translations, Rotherham's and the Amplified Bible. And the words that I really want you to focus on are the words in purple. You see there it says, Son of Man, set thy face against Gog. That's that title of the one at the top, the dictator. He's of the land of Magog. If you've got a King James Version on your lap, it doesn't say that. All right, and that's an alteration, an addition you need to make to the King James Version. He's of the land of Magog. This means that he's of the land of Magog. We've got to find out where Magog is. You can determine where Magog is. You can determine where Gog will form his plans for the invasion of the Middle East, because that's what Ezekiel 38 is about. Now, the Amplified Bible says exactly the same thing. This is the correct translation. So where is this Magog? Well, you see a flashing arrow on the screen. That is the Magog of history. Now, it doesn't tell you where the borders are because you need to look a bit closer. But you can see around that you've got other nations that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38. You've got your Rosh, your Meshech, your Tubal, your Gomers, and so on. Tagamas. So we want to find out where Magog historically is. So where is it? Well, I've been challenged on this. I've had people write to me over the years and say, are you sure about this? I said, go and look at the historians. They've come back and said, you know what? It's pretty right. Maybe you haven't got the red line in exactly the right position all the way around, but you're right. This is the Magog of history that historians will tell you existed. And it's got in it, you'll notice, on the left or western side of that red bulge in the middle, okay, it's got in it Germany. And we have traditionally said, oh, well, Magog is Germany. Well, yes, Germany's included in Magog, but Magog is bigger than Germany, all right? Magog includes Ukraine and Belarus, and they are the two largest countries within the border of what was known as Magog, Ukraine and Belarus. So when we're talking about Ezekiel 38, we're really talking about Ukraine and Belarus. I want to show you something what Putin said about those two countries in a moment. Got a bit of a picture? Putin believes that he is going to be the next greatest Vladimir because his hero is Vladimir I. And you see there a reference at the top of the yellow on that map. You see this was the empire of Vladimir the Great or Vladimir I. He's Putin's hero. And he wants to be Vladimir II. But you can't be Vladimir II unless you have the territory of Vladimir I. What is it? Well, the yellow tells you where it is. It was called Kievan Rus. And it includes Ukraine and Belarus, a portion of Russia. That was the kingdom of the original kingdom of the Rus. That's where we get Rosh from in Ezekiel 38 verse 2. It's a reference to Russia. And Kiev was the historic capital in medieval times of the Kievan Rus from 879 AD to 1240 AD. It's quite a lengthy period of time. That's why, of course, when Putin attacked on the 24th of February 2022, he headed straight for Kiev. All right? He wants Kiev back. So why does he want Kiev back? Well, if you went back to that previous slide, it told you why. Because of religion. Do you know that? Not just politics, not just territory. It's because of religion. Because the Ukrainian Russian Orthodox Church separated itself from the Moscow Patriarchate of the Russian Orthodox Church about 3 or 4 years ago. And Putin, of course, is close. He's close to the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, and he was asked to get it back. You've got to get Ukraine back. It'd be like taking South America from the Catholic Church. What do you reckon the Catholics would do about that? All right? That's the equivalent. take South America from the Catholic Church. They wouldn't just sit there and twiddle their thumbs, would they? And neither has Putin. He wants Ukraine back for good reasons. One, because it's politically what he wants to achieve in relation to his greatness as Vladimir II, but he also wants them back in the church, which is why, of course, there's calls from the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia to stop the gay marches, to stop the liberal tendencies in Ukraine. They want to put an end to all of that, all right? So this is why it's happening, brothers and sisters. And if you have not read the lengthy article by Vladimir Putin on the 12th of July, 2021, which you can look it up on the internet, it's all there. If you haven't read that, you should, because it tells you exactly what is happening now and why it's happening now and why it will culminate in a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. This is what Putin said in that article. I'm going to show you a bit more of it in a minute. He said Russians and Ukrainians were one people, a single whole, all descendants of ancient Rus. You see the yellow? Kievan Rus. All descendants of ancient Rus. Yeah, he's going to get it back. Now, this is just one small snippet from that article. It goes on for pages. This is what he said. Putin knows his history. He knows his history better than you know, and I know. All right? He is a historian. He said this: Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. Now, Belarus has got RUS in it, so it tells you where they came from. Belarusians are all descendants of ancient Rus, which was the largest state in Europe. Slavic and other tribes across the vast territory from Ladoga, Novgorod, Sukh, to Kiev and Chernigov were bound together by one language, which we now refer to as Old Russian. Economic ties, the rule of the princes of the Rurik dynasty, and after the baptism of Rus, he's talking about the conversion of Vladimir I to Christianity. He says, after the baptism of the Rus, the Orthodox faith. He means the Russian Orthodox Church. The spiritual choice made by St. Vladimir, who was both Prince of Novgorod and Grand Prince of Kiev, still largely determines our affinity today. Now, you notice that was the 12th of July, 2021. When did Russia invade Ukraine? 24th of February, 2022. It took him a little over 6 months to put into practice what he had put in that article. The world should know. They have wasted trillions of dollars trying to defend Ukraine. The Bible says Ukraine will be part of Russia at the time of Armageddon. And you and I are watching it happen. I want to show you what's happening. Right? It's going to end that way. Now, it's painful, it's very costly, it's taking a long time, but that is what will happen because it's a religious war as much as a political one. So what's the current situation in Ukraine? Well, the war's not going well for Ukraine. That's the most obvious thing. Russian forces in the east are making steady progress, taking towns and cities. They've just taken one the last week, one by one, albeit at a tremendous cost. You know what Donald Trump said about a week ago? 27,000 soldiers are dying in that war every month. Most of them are Russians. But he doesn't care about that. He can call on 5 million. The Ukrainians could call on initially about 500,000. Now they're down to 350,000. And I'll tell you one of the reasons for that. Desertions from the army. Did you know that? Desertions from the Ukrainian army. Ukraine has been steadily drained of fighting men, weapons and ammunition. Desertions from the army are increasing rapidly as Russia gains ground. Why would you put your life on the line when you know it's not going to turn out very well? So a lot of Ukrainians who were very keen about the idea of fighting Russians are no longer very keen about it. And if you look, you can't avoid this, you get onto YouTube or something like that, and you see all these Ukrainian women that want to come to Australia, find a husband in Australia. You seen them? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? They're getting out. And the Ukrainians are sick to death of not being able to sleep at night because of drone and missile attacks taking down their infrastructure, their electricity, so you've got no power for days or weeks on end. They're sick of it, like you would be. So where this is going to end up is pretty obvious to anybody that's looking at it squarely. Vital infrastructure, as I said, is being destroyed progressively, little by little, and a lot of heartache and pain is being inflicted on that country. It's all unnecessary if they just read their Bible. Go back to the Russian Orthodox Church. Let Putin rule you. Of course, the world thinks that's nonsense, but the Bible says it's going to happen. So this is the Russian conquest in Ukraine so far. You see those pinkish areas on that map? Over in the east, in the Donbass, etc. But I want to just talk about Odessa. A couple of weeks ago, I saw an article from a so-called expert on Ukraine. And he said that if Odessa, and you can see where that red arrow is pointing, that's the only effective port that Ukraine has. Ukraine, by the way, is the breadbasket of Eurasia. Most of the wheat and crops that are grown in Ukraine. Right? They've got vast plains on which they can grow wheat and other crops. But you've got to export them to get the money for them. You need a port to do that. Well, Odessa is their port at the moment. And this expert said that if Odessa falls to Russia, that will be the end of Ukraine. Not only will it not be able to export what it creates, but it won't be able to import the things it needs to continue the war. So it doesn't look very good for Ukraine. Now, you've probably heard about the toings and froings of Trump, who wants to impose peace in Ukraine. And you've probably heard about they're wearing out the airlines, going backwards and forwards for meetings over the course of this year. The latest one is the report here in December the 2nd. Russia says meeting for meeting with US on Ukraine peace proposal ends no closer to deal. Speaking ahead of his meeting with Witkoff and Kushner, that's Trump's son-in-law, Putin said Russia was prepared to involve European states in negotiations as long as they recognise what he called the realities on the battlefield. In other words, you saw those pink areas that they've already conquered. Yeah, he says, well, we're not giving them back. We're certainly not giving Crimea back, which we took in 2014. You're not getting that back. That's the realities of the battlefield. So that's the line in the sand as far as he's concerned. But then he said this: we have no intention of fighting Europe. Now, why would he say that? Well, because you see, some European nations are foolishly saying that they're going to form an organisation, an army, that will go in and help the Ukrainians fight against the Russians. You know what that means? They're fighting Russia. And this is what he said. This is his warning. He said, we have no intention of fighting Europe. I've said that 100 times. But if Europe wants to fight again and starts, then we are ready for that immediately. Now, if I was a European leader, I would be having second thoughts about creating an army to go and support the Ukrainian army, wouldn't you? Yeah. So this is what's happening, brothers and sisters, in Ukraine. Now, do I need to say any more about this? Is it pretty obvious to you that the Bible's going to be fulfilled pretty soon? We don't know how long it's going to take, but a year, 2, I don't really care. We are watching it happen, and it will happen. But there's another problem for Ukraine and the European nations, particularly some in NATO. And it's this. This article you'll see is 15th of September this year. It says this: can NATO countries stop buying Russian oil, as Trump demands? Now, you know, Trump's a deal maker, but he's also got a little bit of common sense. What he's saying is, you European nations want to support Ukraine, but you're still buying Russian oil. Some of them were, but they're not all of them anymore. There's Hungary, Slovakia and Turkey who are involved. All right. So he's got a point, hasn't he? US President Donald Trump has said NATO countries should stop buying Russian oil if they want Washington to tighten sanctions on Moscow. But achieving this could be time-consuming and challenging. Only 3 NATO nations currently import Russian crude: Hungary, Slovakia and Turkey. Of the 3, Turkey is the big one. According to our data, Turkey is the 3rd largest Russian oil importer globally, said one expert. And you'll notice down the bottom that we say that India and China also import Russian oil. And of course, that's just been arranged in the last week in India. They're going to continue to buy Russian oil. This is a problem, isn't it? Because if they continue to do that, Russia can continue the war. So the sanctions are not working. And that, of course, means that ultimately Russians will overtake Ukraine. And when they do, the European nations are going to have to rethink their policy towards Russia. Because you see, there are people in the wings like this lady. I put this up many times, so you probably have heard this before. This is Marine Le Pen, hard right-wing politician in France. An article in 2016, when she was standing for election, in the presidential election, said France has a major far-right Eurosceptic, which means she wants to get rid of the European Union, an openly pro-Russian party that receives funding from the Kremlin. That cost her a few votes, by the way, that revelation. As leader of the National Front, she advocates leaving the Eurozone, withdrawal from NATO, abolition of the International Monetary Fund, limits on immigration, and forging what she calls a privileged partnership with Russia. Read Ezekiel 38, verses 5 and 6. Because that's exactly what it says. Russia will not need to invade Western Europe. They will fall into their lap because of parties like this. And when the depression comes, brothers and sisters, guess who's going to get in power? Not the idiots who have bankrupted France and Germany, that's for sure. The people will put these kind of people in power. They almost got there in the German elections a little while ago, earlier this year. They're the second most powerful party in Germany right now. So who's going to get into power when the depression comes? Yeah, I know. And we're going to have a fulfillment of Ezekiel 38, 5 and 6. So brothers and sisters, we are watching some really interesting things happen. Now, if you wonder why this woman supports Putin, there are many reasons for it, but the one down the bottom is important. See that one down the bottom? Marine Le Pen described Russian President Vladimir Putin as a defender of the Christian heritage of European civilization. Wow. In other words, when the papacy gets its power back in Europe, it's got people like that ruling nations like France. Can you see where that's going? I wish it happened yesterday, 10 years ago. It hasn't. But it is happening, brothers and sisters. And we need to hang on because it will one day come to pass. And just one more point in relation to Ukraine and Europe. This is an article February earlier this year. UK's Starmer announces defence spending boost ahead of Trump meeting. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer pledged the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, as he readies to meet NATO sceptic US President Donald Trump later this week in Washington. And of course, it goes on to talk about, and many leaders have said the increased spending must continue to counter the growing military threat from Moscow. So Joel 3 says, wake up the mighty men, right? Let them prepare their arms, let them beat their plowshares into swords and so on. Wake them up. Yeah, Starmer's been woken up, and he's not the only one. And Britain, which of course has this socialist left-wing government who don't normally like spending money on defence, are now forced to spend money on defence. And of course, Ezekiel 38:13 tells us that Britain will be one of the opponents of Gog when that invasion comes.
Thanks for staying with us for this report. We pray that the video report has provided some clarity to the situation in the Middle East. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and select all so you never miss a new upload. Don't forget to like, share and drop a comment in the comment section. We love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you follow our playlist and never miss a new report. Until next time, God willing, this has been The Watchman Report, bringing perspective to current world news from a biblical standpoint. Don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you thought. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share it and spread the word. Thanks for watching. And remember to come back soon.